Debunking the myth. Do ostriches bury their heads in the sand? Title: Myth. Ostriches bury their heads in the sand. Imagine a vast, sunlit savanna where majestic creatures roam freely. Among them, the ostrich, a symbol of speed and grace in the animal kingdom. But what if I told you that one of the most enduring images associated with these giants is not of them sprinting across the plains, but rather of them burying their heads deep in the sand? Today on Lost Pages of Science, we're embarking on a journey to unravel the myth that ostriches hide their heads in the sand. Is it true? Or is it just another captivating story that has been passed down through the ages? In this video, we'll travel through time, from ancient observations to modern scientific studies, to explore the origins, persistence, and reality behind this myth. We'll examine key facts, share intriguing anecdotes, and pose thought-provoking questions that invite you to question what you think you know. So strap in as we challenge a common misconception and discover the fascinating truth about ostriches, their behavior, and how myths take flight in the realm of science. Our story begins in the dusty annals of history, when human curiosity about nature was intertwined with myth-making and superstition. For centuries, people observed ostriches in the wild, noting their peculiar behaviors and immense size. Yet, with limited scientific understanding, these observations were often misinterpreted. One prevalent idea was that ostriches, when threatened or in distress, would simply lower their heads into the sand to hide from danger. This image, so vivid and memorable, was captured in art and literature, transforming into a symbol of avoidance and denial. But what are the origins of this belief? Historians suggest that the myth may have roots in both literal misinterpretations and metaphorical language. Ancient travelers and naturalists, encountering the ostrich for the first time, might have seen the birds bending low to forage or turn over in the dust. Over time, these behaviors were misread as acts of deliberate concealment. In the absence of modern scientific tools, early observers relied on imagination and myth to explain what they saw. To understand how such a striking image could persist, consider the power of anecdote and metaphor. Parents and teachers would often use the phrase, "burying your head in the sand," as a metaphor for avoiding problems, drawing inspiration from the supposed behavior of ostriches. These stories were passed down through generations, gaining traction in everyday language. One popular anecdote recounts a 17th century traveler's observation. He described how, in the heat of the day, an ostrich appeared to be hiding its head in the earth, as if to escape the blazing sun. Without the context of modern ethology, such descriptions quickly morphed into the belief that the bird was engaging in a form of self-preservation by hiding. Yet, despite its popularity, there was little evidence to support the idea that ostriches actually bury their heads. This discrepancy between myth and fact sets the stage for our deeper exploration. Fast forward to the present, where modern science and careful observation have given us a clearer picture of ostrich behavior. So, what do ostriches really do when they lower their heads? And why might this be misinterpreted as burying their heads in the sand? Ostriches are primarily ground-dwelling birds, spending much of their day pecking at the ground in search of food. Their long necks and heads naturally dip close to the ground as they forage for seeds, insects, and plants. This behavior, while perfectly normal, can be mistaken for the act of hiding. Instead of being a defensive tactic, it's simply a practical way to search for nourishment. During breeding seasons, ostriches exhibit intriguing nesting behavior. The females lay their eggs in shallow nests on the ground. Sometimes the birds will crouch low over these nests to shield the eggs from the harsh sun or potential predators. To an observer, it might seem as though the ostriches are burying their heads, but in reality, they are simply engaging in protective, nurturing behavior. Ostriches are adapted to live in some of the hottest environments on Earth. Lowering their heads and necks can also be a way to reduce heat absorption. By keeping their heads low, they might avoid direct sunlight, which can help in regulating their body temperature during the scorching daytime heat. This behavior, however, is often misinterpreted by those unfamiliar with the nuances of animal physiology. Visual suggestion. Footage or animated diagrams showing ostriches foraging on the ground, nurturing their nests, and utilizing thermoregulation behaviors. Include close-ups of their facial expressions and body language. A key turning point in dispelling the myth came with the advent of modern ethology, the study of animal behavior. Researchers began to systematically observe ostriches in their natural habitats, armed with cameras, tracking devices, and a scientific curiosity that questioned long-held beliefs. One notable study involved detailed behavioral observation over several seasons, during which scientists recorded when and why ostriches lowered their heads. The findings were clear. The birds did not bury their heads to hide from danger, as the myth suggests. Instead, they exhibited head-lowering behavior in contexts related to feeding, nesting, and heat management. Dr. Elena Ramirez, an ornithologist specializing in African bird species, remarks, "Ostriches are incredibly adaptive creatures. Their behavior is driven by survival needs like foraging and protecting their young, not by a misguided instinct to hide." Her research, along with multiple field studies from institutions around the world, has provided compelling evidence that the head-burying myth is nothing more than a misinterpretation of natural behavior. Furthermore, advanced imaging and tracking technology have allowed researchers to monitor the activity patterns of ostriches with remarkable precision. Time-lapse videos reveal that when ostriches lower their heads, it is a momentary action, never a prolonged hiding act. The birds quickly resume their normal activities, reinforcing the idea that this behavior is functional rather than evasive. Despite overwhelming scientific evidence, the myth that ostriches bury their heads in the sand persists in popular culture. Why does this image continue to capture our imagination? Metaphor for avoidance. The phrase "burying your head in the sand" has become a powerful metaphor for avoidance. It symbolizes a deliberate act of ignoring problems rather than facing them, a sentiment that resonates in many aspects of human behavior. This metaphor, once applied to ostriches, has now taken on a life of its own, far removed from any biological reality. Iconic imagery. The visual of an ostrich with its head hidden beneath the sand is striking and memorable. It's a symbol that encapsulates both the animal's imposing size and a perceived sense of clumsiness or denial. This image is often repeated in cartoons, movies, and literature, reinforcing the myth with every retelling. Educational oversimplification. In many early educational settings, simple explanations were favored over complex realities. Children were taught these catchy, albeit inaccurate facts as a way to simplify the natural world. Over time, these simplifications solidified into facts that were hard to unlearn, even as scientific understanding advanced. How do we reconcile the simplicity of myths with the often messy and complex truths revealed by science? Can a myth serve as a stepping stone to deeper inquiry, even if it is ultimately incorrect? The myth of the ostrich burying its head is more than just an amusing misconception. It serves as a fascinating case study in how myths form and persist in the human mind. It illustrates the complex interplay between observation, interpretation, and cultural storytelling. The role of observation. Early observers did not have the benefit of modern technology. Their observations were influenced by limited perspective, cultural context, and the need to create coherent stories out of sporadic glimpses of behavior. In many cases, what was seen was interpreted through the lens of myth rather than science. The evolution of knowledge. As scientific tools and methods have improved, so too has our understanding of animal behavior. What once was considered an unquestioned truth can now be re-examined, challenged, and ultimately refined. This evolution of knowledge is a testament to the power of scientific inquiry and the importance of remaining open to new evidence. The persistence of myths. Even when faced with evidence, myths can persist because they serve emotional and psychological needs. They provide simple explanations for complex phenomena and often resonate with our personal experiences. In the case of the ostrich myth, it reflects a broader human tendency to avoid uncomfortable truths by creating comforting, if inaccurate, narratives. As we draw our journey to a close, let's reflect on what we've uncovered today. The myth that ostriches bury their heads in the sand is a captivating blend of misinterpretation, cultural storytelling, and the human desire for simple answers. Yet, through careful observation and rigorous scientific study, we now know that this behavior is simply a natural part of how ostriches interact with their environment, whether for foraging, nesting, or thermoregulation. Key takeaways. Origins of the myth. The belief likely originated from early observations and cultural metaphors, where ostriches' natural behaviors were misinterpreted as acts of evasion. Scientific evidence. Modern research shows that ostriches lower their heads for practical reasons such as feeding, protecting their nests, and managing body heat, not to hide from danger. Cultural impact. Despite being debunked by science, the myth endures as a powerful metaphor for avoidance, illustrating how myths can persist even when evidence contradicts them. The nature of myths. This myth serves as a reminder of the evolution of knowledge and the importance of questioning long-held beliefs. It underscores the need for scientific inquiry and critical thinking in the face of simplistic narratives. As we continue to peel back the layers of our shared history, let's embrace the lessons that these myths teach us. They remind us that while myth and science often seem at odds, each has its place in our understanding of the world. Myths inspire curiosity and wonder, pushing us to explore further and seek out the truth. Before we end, I want to leave you with a thought. How many of the facts you learned as a child have you never questioned, simply because they were repeated over and over again? The next time you hear a catchy myth, take a moment to wonder. What is the story behind it, and what does modern science have to say? If you enjoyed this deep dive into the myth of ostriches burying their heads in the sand, please hit that subscribe button and join our community here at Lost Pages of Science. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. What other myths have you encountered that made you question the obvious? Your curiosity and engagement are what drive our journey into the hidden pages of science. Thank you for watching, and remember, the pursuit of truth is an endless adventure. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and stay curious. Until next time on Lost Pages, take a moment to look a little closer at the world around you. There's always more than meets the eye.